Hello and welcome everyone to our Saturday stream. I'm Josh and this is our RPG map and image creation. It's been a little while since I've been here, so thanks everyone for joining me here today. I'm only going to be doing a short stream today. I've been battling some health issues, so getting back into the swing of things and hopefully everything will go well today. So we shall see. I don't have a whole lot of news for you guys today because I'm a little bit still out of the loop, but as we get back into the swing of things, more and more should be coming your way. I know that we do have a lot of image things image tools that are getting refined behind the scenes and things that are be coming out shortly. So stay tuned and hopefully all of you guys will be able to pick up on those in the next few weeks. But thanks everyone. So I don't even remember if we were working on a project or doing a map or what we were doing before. So we'll just kind of wing it here today and jump in and do some new stuff or maybe if anyone has any questions or has anything that they need to further explanation on or anything along those lines, feel free to throw it into chat and I'll be happy to try and assist you in any way I can. All right. So, do you guys have any suggestions for anything you'd like to see built today, or is there anything that you guys have been struggling on as far as like the image creation tools or any types of maps or whatnot that you guys have been wanting to make? Because I am completely open to any suggestions. Ooh, a library in hell. We could make that today. That sounds pretty fun. Also, everything that we make here eventually gets put up onto the Forge, so you guys will have access to that. You will be required to have the art packages. I only use our official art packages, so if you have the art subscription, you'll be able to use those. Um, oh, we have an entire art package that kind of involves that. So the suggestion here is a library in hell and how to do like lava effects. So why don't we do some of that today? And if we jump over here, make sure that I have all of this stuff kind of loaded up here. And we can go into our, if you guys haven't seen, I'm actually in the test channel. So I'm not sure if this is live yet, the changes to the sidebar. But if not, this will be soon. But in our modules, no, not our modules, in our assets, we'll have all of our listing of all of the different art packages that we might have. And one of our official art packages is the Abyss map pack. And inside of here we have lots of different hellish type of imagery that we can use, including lava and fire effects, smoke, and all of that kind of thing. And we can combine that with an interior map package and do some really kind of cool stuff. So let's jump right in here and kind of do this. I'm going to start off with a base kind of background from here. And we have two different ways that we can do that. We can kind of either, depending on if we want it to be the majority of it to be a lava area, or if we want the majority of it to be land with like lava streams and whatnot. So obviously we'll be placing land out if we want the majority of it to be lava and vice versa. So why don't we do kind of like a mix? We can go into our tiles, and here we have a group of different elements that are all seamless. They all work together perfectly so that you can just kind of drag and drop these out. And so what we can do is kind of build up the area that we want to. Now, if you guys are new to Fantasy Grounds Unity, there's a couple of ways that we can get our image going. We can open up our images over on this side, and we can either grab one of these and drag it and drop in here. We could right click and create a new item, but we could also do it right from our assets window here. So let's say if I'm going to grab this one and I can just click on this and we can create an image record just from this one alone. And this is going to be based off of the naming convention of the actual image that we've selected. And so here we can see that we have it here. So why don't I just going to rename this so we don't get confused here. And we'll call it something like Hellish Library. And what we can do over here is we can immediately kind of adjust our grid system. I'm going to do 100 by 100 just for easy math and doing all of those sorts of things. And then I'm also going to lower down the opacity of this just so that I can still use it for placing out things. It's great for when we're trying to line things up perfectly, especially if we're going to do like any sort of interior stuff and whatnot. But this is just going to give us a good basis from which to build from. And then I can grab any of these that I wish and just kind of drag these out. And as you can see, these will all work just seamlessly together. And then to simplify things, I'm just going to select both of these, and I'm going to hit Control C, Control V. Well, I guess that only does one thing, but that's okay. We can do it just like this as well. And you can do it by pushing this button down here at the bottom. If I wanted to make this even much larger, I could grab all of these and I could just duplicate them and pull them out something like this. We might even want to flip them and build in this kind of central area. I'm not too worried about this tiling effect that's going on because we're going to be building up some layers and doing some lava effects and all of that stuff. So now we have this really big kind of nice working space for us to build on. So let's create a new folder here, and we're just going to call this folder ground. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place all of these right inside this folder. And what that does is this acts now as one unit. So I can now just interact with this and move this around and change it in any way I want to. And that's going to use all of these different layers as one particular element over here. The next thing that we're going to do is figure out where we're going to kind of have our library. So you're thinking about an interior location, or is this going to be like this exterior place where there's all kinds of books and this rather exposed environmental place? Which either way, it's a pretty kind of simple thing. But from the design aspect, we'll want to think about where doorways are going to be and that sort of thing. Oh, so that's going to be a building. Sure. Right. So I was thinking before kind of like this cool exterior library where you just have these piles of books and bookshelves and whatnot, maybe on a raised plateau in this really kind of surreal, otherworldly environment. But we can do an interior as well. Maybe we'll do it kind of like Greek style, like a library that you might find in Hades. So the next thing we'll do is we'll plan out our areas here that are going to be our lava. So you're going to have like streams of lava. Is that the kind of thing like obstacles you might want to be going over? Or like, are you going to have big pools of lava? And that's the kind of the next kind of thought process that we're going to go with. If we go into here, we can go into our brushes, and you can see we have a whole bunch of different brushes here that we can kind of build this up. So why don't we do like a small little lake, or maybe what we'll do is we'll butt this to an area of lava. What I can do is I can actually come in here, and maybe what I'll do is I'll delete these ones. And we can go back into our tiles over here, and I'm just going to drag out this kind of like lava texture that we have here. And this is going to work with all of our brushes. So we have some brushes here that will help us kind of divide this up. And I'm going to actually drop this down into my ground as well. Drop this right in here. And we're going to move this to the top because I'm going to be painting over some of these other areas here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new painting layer. And this painting layer, I'm actually going to build out a little bit of an area over here, and then we're going to create a stream coming off of it and kind of build from there. And there's a couple of ways that we can kind of do this depending on how we want all of this to interact. So what I'll do first is I'll grab this guy and we'll make this more of an appropriate level here. And you can see what this is we have an edge, and then this kind of fades off into the other environment in here. So the way that I'm going to actually interact with the system is I can hold down Control, and that's going to help me snap to all of the grid system. This is why that we want to keep our grid visible, at least for while we're doing this kinds of stuff. And maybe I'm going to do like a stream that's kind of come off of here, and then we might even do another stream. We'll have our library over on this side. Or maybe what we'll do is we can do some lava on both sides with a library in the middle and build like a bridge across. We can do all kinds of things. Whatever our imagination kind of goes with. And so what we can do is, well, we want to flip this so that we're going in the right direction as I pull down here. And what I'm going to do is as I'm holding down Control, and that's going to help me snap right to that grid system so I can line right up to the edge. And I'm going to just bring it in, and then I'm going to start to deviate here a little bit. I don't want it to be completely straight across. And I'm actually going to build out a little bit here. So you can see I can kind of build this out and maybe bend this around. And I can build off of this as much as I want to. And again, I'll hold down Control and double click to kind of end it down here. And now I'm going to fill in this little area in through here. So I think if we go into our decorations, we're going to have, actually what we can do is just type into our little search area over here, lava. And you can see we have a few different types of lava elements that we can kind of build with here. And some of these are internal and external. We have some dried lava areas and so on and so forth. So what I can actually do is either build right over the top of this, or I can create a new painting later and drop this underneath in between. And we're going to be grouping all this stuff together later so that we can change its colors or do whatever we want to with it. Whatever we decide that we would like to kind of interact with the system, or how we would like to interact with the system. And we can even build off some streams from this. We can actually come in and erase sections and draw things off and pretty much do whatever our heart desires. But I'm actually going to grab this, and instead of using it as I did last time, I'm going to be just using this as like a plain little texture. And because I'm going to be switching over to my stamp tool, I can paint this in underneath, as you can see here. And what I'm going to do is, let's just kind of rotate this around and do some different shapes here. And what I'm going to do is I'll actually kind of use the A key, and I'm going to drop down my opacity. And to make this a little bit more of a complex kind of way that this is going to kind of peel out here. So we get this a little bit of confusion, but then we have these like darker areas out through here. And we can really kind of start to change the environment. And then we can use some effects layers over this to cause it to have like that like heat rising from it and steam and all sorts of things. So here's a good base for which we were going to build, right? We have this land area over here. We have lava area over here. We might even want to do, we can grab some additional lava kind of streams, switch back to our paintbrush here, our line tool. And again, I'm going to switch back up into this layer. I'm going to keep all of these here, and maybe we'll paint some. I'm actually going to start that one a little bit over here. And we'll create this, kind of bringing this down, and we'll bring it right across. A couple of different hazards for our players to kind of interact with here. Maybe we'll build a little bridge over this, or do some other kind of elements here. And you can see this is already starting to kind of break up all of that stuff that we might want to have, or that repeating kind of factor of some of the tiling that's difficult to kind of do away with. So let's get rid of our little lava search here. If we go into our decorations, you can see we have a whole bunch of different textures and whatnot that we can use to kind of change our landscape, as well as all the different smokes and burnt trees, elevation effects, all kinds of different stuff that we can kind of do. And we've used these kind of assets in the past. I think that we did, if we go into our images here, I think, oh yeah, we did a hellish forests a while back. And here we did a much similar kind of environment, but we did a lot of it with the elevation, and here we have a river of blood instead. And we did some really nice kind of transitions into the forested area. And we're going to do some of that today too. Not necessarily with forests, but so to change some of the environment and add in all of those different kind of elements here. We'll do a little building here. Maybe we'll build it up this way. And like I said, I think we'll do like a Grecian kind of building. We'll do maybe some toppled columns and whatnot. Maybe we'll even do it on a little bit of an elevation as well. And kind of figure that out as we go. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back over to my stamp tool, and down in this painting area that's kind of underneath here, I'm going to grab some of these other elements, and we'll add a little bit of variety here, um, and change up the way that this all of the system kind of interacts, right? The way that some of this stuff kind of is. And as you can see, as we're underneath here, we're not going to interfere with the stuff that we've already put up. But we have that kind of ability to jump in back and forth between the two layers and kind of do that. And I'm going to do another one, maybe something like this. And then maybe what we'll do is I'll grab something like this, and I'm going to start to build out. I'm not going to worry about the edge too much, as I want to kind of like bleed this out into this exterior over here. And I always kind of, for some reason, I really like having rigid edges and then breaking it up at certain points. So we can kind of do that as well. But this gives us quite a lot to kind of work with here. Great. So now what we can do is kind of plot out, and this is one of the great things that we can kind of use the system to do, because we have the folders and the layers and all of these sorts of things. We can kind of build things and then worry about building underneath and so on and so forth. So I'm going to create a new painting layer, and we're going to call this one the library. And this is where I'm going to start to lay out my basic shape of the floor and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm going to jump out of this particular asset group, and I'm going to go into the interior map pack 2. And here we have a whole bunch of different floors to kind of choose from. And some of these are really cool, kind of along the lines of what we are thinking here. And we can kind of use these to build up that kind of tiled floor. And then we can kind of build like these grunginess on top, and maybe we'll do all kinds of other stuff. But it's always good to kind of plan out all of your basic elements in the very start, and that's going to give you a really good kind of understanding of where everything's going to be, so you don't get into this element of trying to do too much finished work and then realizing you have to change it to accommodate the system or the environment that you're really trying to make. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm in my stamp tool, and I'm going to grab some of these things, and you can see that these are all going to be set up for, let's grab this one. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use this as like a central kind of element, and then I'm going to do some of these tiles around the outside as well. And the reason why I'm just going to be building it here is because this is all going to be on one layer here, I can move this after the fact. And kind of show you how that's going to work here. We can even change the size of certain elements and whatnot as we go, and that's what I'm actually going to do with this. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe grab something like this, and I'm going to change this. So I'm going to turn off my aspect lock ratio, and with my width I'm going to keep it at 4, but my height I'm going to change it to 6 to match this. So I'm going to do this on either side here, and then I'm going to rotate this. And I'm gonna change. Well, you know what? Let's just kind of keep it like this for the moment, and maybe we'll do another element along the edges here. So this is going to be like this very decorative kind of floor that's kind of broken up, and we can create some kind of cool borders and whatnot with changing all of these different aspects. So I'm going to make this so that it's let's see, 8 wide, and I'm only going to make it too tall. And I'm not going to worry too much about the distortion. Actually, we want to make it 6 wide here. Well, I guess it's 7, right in the middle. And let's flip it. Well, not flip it that way. Flip it that way. And this is going to be the basis of what we're going to build up from here. Now I can do a whole bunch of different stuff from this element here. We can change its colors and all of that in the tab because it's all on one layer. But what I can actually do is by switching back into the layers tab, I can start to move this around and figure out exactly where I want it to be. Right? So maybe we're going to build some steps up to it. But I think I want it to be a little bit more centralized to here, so I think I'm going to move it over to something like this. Now I can switch back into the painting tab and I can continue to build this up from here. Now if I want to keep this separate as like this floor base a layer, I can continue to create additional layers and kind of paint on top of this. And I think that that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do another layer that's going to be underneath, which is going to be where we're going to have a little bit of the structure that kind of pops out. We can do any sort of element around here. And we can go back into our, let's see, the Abyss pack here. And we have some, some decorations here that are cliffs, for example. Something like this. And then what I can do is I can actually switch over into a rectangle kind of mode, and I can pull this out to create that kind of an element that's going to be underneath here. So I'm going to create a new painting layer. I'm going to drop this down in underneath here. Oh, so we have a question here. Can you combine layers, then undo to separate them again? You cannot combine layers currently. So but what you can do is you can group these layers into folders. And then those layers act as an individual object while they're in there. And that way you never have to worry about having to uncombine them or combine them later. But everything that we paint onto a particular layer becomes a single object to us. Even though we can go back in and erase things and change things later, it is for all intents and purposes like I just moved this conglomerate of tile around. Yep, you can move them in and out of the folders and rearrange their height order and everything. So once I have all of the library kind of built up here, you'll see we'll put it all into a folder, and that's going to be its own little separate entity. And then we can move that around and do all kinds of fun stuff with it. So what I can do here is I can kind of pull this out and create a really rough kind of environmental change here. As something like this, right? And this is going to be my base from which that I'm going to say that this is this element that is raised up from the other places here. And I can come back into my layers tab because this is on its own separate layer here. You can see I can kind of change this. I can interact with this in a completely independent way. And I'm just going to be using this as a base to kind of figure out how I want this to feel like risen up from the rest of it. Oh yeah, well you can do that on the fly anyway. Individual layers, you can change the colors as you go. So you might not even need to do that. What I can do is like, for example, like this element that I've just built here, I can always come in and change this color to whatever I wish. And I can do this on the fly, and this will update in real time to my players. So you can actually interact with the system while you're playing. So if you need to change the colors of particular aspects, you can just change its color. You might not need to have individual items for that. Depends on the scenario, obviously. Okay, so the way that the certain elements, so the question is, can module maps be rotated so north is up? So, depending on how the map is created and depending on the system that is used to create it. What I mean by that, and I can just do like a really quick little demonstration here. So let me create a new painting layer, and I'm just going to call this test, and this will be a good little one. So when questions come up, we can just kind of paint in here and demonstrate a couple of things. I'm going to switch over to my stamp tool, right? I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a difference. Well, let's do the line first. I'm going to do a line. And you can see that this creates a little bit of a ridge here. And then if I switch to the stamp tool, and I'll rotate one and I'll do another stamp here. Okay, so now let's go back into this system and we're going to rotate it, right? Now I'm even going to use control but you can see that the line will rotate normally. A stamped image will maintain its orientation. It's just its location will change as you rotate. So this depending on how the map is made, you can easily rotate it. Um, but in other circumstances it can't. So it's a very use case kind of scenario there. And we can just kind of move that over there in case there's any other questions while we work. Oh yeah, you absolutely do that. And you can do that also with lighting and effect layers and all of those types of things as well. And we can kind of demonstrate a lot of that stuff. So yeah, there's a one of the great things about the way that Fantasy Grounds and the whole image system is kind of put together here is that there are so many different ways to solve all of the different problems that you might run into while in your creation process. And it just fosters so much creativity. All right, so I'm going to jump back over here, and I'm just going to make this, we'll call this, I'm going to call it incline for right now, just so that I have a frame of reference so I don't have to keep testing out where all these different things are. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to expand this out a little bit. I want a little bit of this white space so I can kind of build off of it as well. And I'm not going to worry about too much on how this actually feels around the outside because we can kind of alter that. We're going to add different elements. I want to build some rocks up on one side and so on and so forth. But this just gives us a really good kind of base from which to build. And now I can go back down into this lower area and I can grab some of these elements that I might want. Let's see here. And kind of build out some of this stuff to make this feel like a more solid kind of area here. So maybe we'll come back into here and I'll switch to my stamp tool. And as you can see here, I can begin to, we'll make this like this rocky kind of element here. And this is where, when you do your image creation stuff inside of Fantasy Grounds, it almost becomes like painting. It feels very painterly at times. I have so much fun doing this stuff. And once we add in our shadow content and all of that stuff, you'll get a really good sense of depth and all of that. And we can build up some steps from there and so on and so forth. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my incline right now. And I'm going to, well, why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? We can go back into our interior map pack 2 and just type in step, but it's probably under stair. Yeah, here we have some nice stairs, so we can just kind of drag these out. I'm going to rotate it here, and I'll make it a bit larger. And I think what I'll actually do is let's make our width 6. Oh, because we changed it, so let's make that 4 and make that 6. Something like this. Might even make it like 3. Yeah, a little bit more narrow like this. And at any time you want to adhere to the grid system, all you have to do is hold down Control and it will snap right into the grid. So you can get like these perfect kind of fits and whatnot. And the reason why I wanted to do that first is I'm actually going to build out a little bit of a foundation for my building. We have our floor here, so we have a good idea of the size. So now what I can do is I can go into my brushes, and there's a whole bunch of different like stone work and whatnot that I can kind of grab from here. Many of the art packs have stonework that you can kind of grab, so you can always kind of feel free to grab them from whatever, mix and match and use them in a multitude of different ways. But I'm just going to kind of, and I'm holding down Control so I can snap to these increments here. And you can see I have it's a little bit weird on this side, but I kind of like that. It kind of makes it feel like it's maybe shifted with the ages and done a little bit of change with all of that kind of stuff. And we're going to build on top of that anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come up here and grab something like this. And this is going to be my little edge up here. And I can do this actually on the library itself. And I'm just going to kind of drag this. And so now we have like this really kind of multi-layered feeling here. So you can see we already have quite a lot of our map done in no time whatsoever. And I think I'm also going to go in, let's look up. Yeah, we have some columns that we can do. We even have some that are kind of knocked over. So we might want to do some that are fallen. And I'm still thinking that this might be primarily an exterior, right? Like some of those old uh, Greek style temples where it was mainly just columns and roof and whatnot. But we shall see. We shall see. But I think what I'll do is, and you can, if you guys are unfamiliar with all of, I use a lot of shortcut keys. So if I do something and you guys are unsure what I do, like how I rotate this freely, I hold down Shift and use the mouse wheel. And this only works in the image tab. But if you hold down Control, you can change its size and so on and so forth. So you can do a lot. I can also change, hold down R, G, or B, and I can change the color of this. I can do each one individually or all at the same time, and I can hold down A and change the alpha channel, make it more or less transparent. So what I think I'll do is maybe we'll have this one from here, and let's rotate it in. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to hit Control Z. Before we get into that, we should probably set up, or we should do this on a different layer. That's what we should do, so that we can do things underneath between the floor and things that are kind of placed on it. So we can do like some smashed elements and whatnot. And I'm going to hold down Control and we're going to be doing a lot of um, like I said before, we're going to add some textures over the top of things and do some stuff like that. So we can maybe we'll do something like this. Yeah, I think that this will be good. So let's go back down into our library. I'm not sure if we have too much like textures in this particular one. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to write in texture. Oftentimes I will put in on some of these things, and these snow textures are actually great. These can be used in almost every situation. So let's grab one of these. And the reason why that this works so well is because the way that Fantasy Grounds interacts with the color system is it's additive. And so if something is white, we can change it to whatever color we wish, right? So I can hold down R, G, and B, right, and make sure that I've this selected over here. Oh, you can see what I did there. And I can bring this down, and maybe I'll add a little bit more red to it. Let's take away some of that green and blue, make it a little bit on the brown side. And now I'm going to drop down the alpha channel here a little bit. And you can see that if we open this up, this is what I've actually done here. Oh yes, so we have a question here. The map and image creation is already included in FGU. Yep, it is a built-in and fundamental system to it. Included in that is all of the line of sight and all of the lighting, dynamic lighting system. And it's all tied together not only with specifically Fantasy Grounds, but also all of the different rule sets. So it interacts seamlessly between all of the systems. And I'm using specifically the art packs that I created for uh, the official Fantasy Grounds art packs. Yeah, you get everything. You get yeah, $5 per month or $50 per year, and I think that we've released 30 something products so far. thousands upon thousands of images. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to worry too much. I want to kind of make this, see, this is going to feel like we get some of this this cool kind of interaction. And I'm going to hold down control. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and change some of this stuff. And this is just going to be a little bit of a base, right? Like, and I might even bring down my alpha channel there a little bit and make some areas a little bit more subtle. But because it's on this outside element, we get this red dust that kind of comes in. Right, we should have easy access for our for so people can crawl up. Yep, you can import anything you'd like. You can make any sort of assets that you wish and use them all. Absolutely. It's a very robust system. And now we can go into our books here. We have a whole bunch of different books that we can kind of use. Oh, the Modern House pack has a bunch of different books, right? I forgot about that one. But we have all of these kind of built-in, these like book groupings. And these are going to work really well for us. What I think I'm going to do actually is I'm going to clear a couple of these spots down here. And I'm actually going to grab these and I'm just going to drop them down in here. And that way I can just grab and use these. Let's delete these. Oh, these were a bunch of different. Let me just check these really quick. Oh yeah, this is the Frog King's lair that we made a while ago. Crashed spaceship and so on. Oh, excellent. Yeah, yeah. It's super fun. I think that creating maps inside of Fantasy Grounds is one of my most favorite things to do. Let's just grab a couple of these, and I want to do some that are just kind of like it's kind of random ones as well. So let's grab some of these ones from the and what I'll actually do, I'll show you guys a nice little trick. Actually, you know what? We don't need to do this. Let's actually build um, on this particular painting layer. We're going to create a new painting layer. We're going to call this one uh, Loose Books. What I'll actually do is I'm going to create a little grouping here of a pile of books. We'll do some of these large kind of like grimoire ones with some smaller ones. And what we'll do is we're going to build up this little like grouping of books here like this. Maybe like there's a smashed little area over here. And you can see what I can actually do is I can grab this and bring this down here. We're going to drop this down in. We want it to be above our floor but underneath this, right? Now what I can actually do is I can duplicate this. So I can duplicate this. And what I'll do is create a folder actually. And we're going to call this one. We might even want to change this to like debris. Well, yeah, let's just call it debris. And I'm going to put this down here. We want it to be under here. And let's drag and drop these right inside of here. So with this selected, I can move this over and I can rotate this. I'm going to hold down control so it does not. And this is where the stamping kind of really comes into a really cool kind of fruition. as the system, because I can now expand these apart and change their order because I have this little conglomerate here, and I can interact with this in a way where I can use what I've already put down there to produce an endless amount of different kind of debris elements, right? And I'll show you how we can do this. I'll do some smashed boards and all kinds of stuff. And we can produce very quickly a really seemingly very complex system of images that seem to be all smashed up all over the place. Okay, so we have a question from Steve. Would importing high resolution PNGs and using quite a few on any given map slow the upload time, significantly compared to just using FGU assets? So yes, and no, depending on how you use them. Let me just briefly kind of explain how the system works as far as Fantasy Grounds goes, right? So let's say, for example, um, and this is kind of a good example here. We have this little scenario here. Now I can we have these books, right? And let me just hide this layer so we can see them here. So we have what looks like be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different images, right? So the way that Fantasy Grounds works is it sends each of those 6 images out to your players. It doesn't matter how many times I use these, so we can continue to duplicate this, right? And now I can grab all of these different copies. So we have our original ones here, and we can start to move these out, and I can grab these ones, and we can rotate these and make this a huge mass of different books. And you would think that this would increase the amount of time that it takes, but it doesn't, because Fantasy Grounds only sends that image once. And then what it does is it sends that metadata, where it's used and how often it's used, if there's any sort of transformations done for it, and so on and so forth. So you can use a high resolution PNG, but it would work best if you used it multiple times, even if you change its shape and color and all of those sorts of things. It's when you have a very huge amount of different images that you're trying to send, and then obviously that's going to require a lot more bandwidth. But here, this is kind of what I was talking about before, and we're just going to change this, and let's spread these ones out a little. And as I said, we can actually, I'm going to go in through here in a moment, and we can even change some of these colors, and you can see we can turn this back on now. Now we have this great big conglomerate here, but this is all contained in here, so I can actually work on this from a much higher level. And this is how the system works best when you have the folders, and it helps you kind of, excuse me, interact with the system in lots of different ways. And now I can come back in through here, and maybe with these selected, I can now change the colors of these books. Maybe we'll bring this down a little bit. And this is going to help us with a little bit more variety here. And then I'll grab these two and these ones. Let's bring the blue down on them. Maybe the green a little bit as well. All of the colors a little. And then I think these ones will do as well. We might even want to bring these ones, bring the red out of that. And so now we have what looks like a huge amount of different images, but really this whole pile of books is only those original 5 or 6 images that we originally used. And so it really cuts down on the bandwidth. Hopefully that gives a little bit of explanation on how that is. Now I can go back in and I can interact with any of these systems any way I want to. So we can, again, we could type in board, and we have a whole bunch of different boards here. We got some nice ones from another art package. Let's see here. Oh, the Desert Ruins. And now I can maybe paint in, well, we want to make sure we have the stamp tool selected, and I can start to paint in, maybe some of these are broken elements and whatnot from smashed up wooden. Maybe we'll come down into this one to do some underneath. Well, yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And that, yeah, you're no problem at all. Now, that only really pertains to um, if you're really concerned about the bandwidth. And if you were doing something on a really large scale, so let's say, for example, if you were recreating the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is a huge map, if you limited it to painting it out with just all of your walls and whatnot with one or two different types of brushes and then use three or four different types of floors, you can make that map as large as you want to. And the load time or the rebuild time is going to be a little bit more, but the actual load that the network's going to have is very, very small. So where we have this one that's kind of painted, I think we'll erase that, and then we can kind of come back into maybe let's do one that's like here, I think. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Great. Now what we can do is I'll actually grab some of these boards, or we can just type in shelf. We have all kinds of different types. We have some that are kind of already set up for like bookshelves and whatnot. But I think we'll just use some of these. I think I'm actually going to use something like this one. And then we can kind of paint in our books on top of it and underneath it as well. So here we have our debris down here. We have this painting area, which is all of this stuff. So let's rename this to our columns. And this is something that I oftentimes forget is making sure that you name your layers so that you don't have to worry about what they are later. All the time I have that issue. And then I end up having to turn them on and off to kind of remember what they are looking at the entire environment. So now we can set these up. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to recolor this because this is this rather faint gray and kind of match this up. I'm also going to change the size of this to make it kind of more in line with my debris down there. So I think I'm going to make this 0.5, and then we'll make this a little bit shorter as well. Maybe we'll do 2.5. So that looks just about right. And then I'm going to grab this, and what I can actually do is use my color picker, and maybe I'll grab something like that. Now this is a little bit off because again it's additive and this is not just pure white, otherwise it would be correct. So now I need to lighten this a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit more red to it and a little bit more green, and you can see that's going to match up pretty well there. And that's going to be good enough. And now I can start to, and what I'll actually do is I'll hold down Control, and I'm going to create a new painting layer, and I'm going to put this under my columns again. And I'm going to just call this shelves. And I'm going to start to stamp out a few different shelves here. And this is going to be my bookcases. I probably should have named it bookcases, but that's okay. And holding down Control, I can make sure that I snap right to the grid. So if I want to make sure that this stays pretty organized, and then I think I'll do a couple that are off kilter, maybe something like this. And maybe this one survived down here. And then we can put some books above and below them. Kind of make it seem like that they're kind of poking out from all of the different sides. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to add in a couple of little extra bits. And we can kind of build up some of the shadow and whatnot to kind of give this a little bit more life before we continue. And we can kind of do it at this point because all of that stuff is going to be on a top level, a higher level. And so whatever we paint can become underneath that, and it's going to just add to the feeling of the environment. So there's a couple of different ways that we can go about do it. We can either paint it in with particular other elements. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to open this up and I'm going to grab this and I'm going to hit Control C. And that's going to copy that hexadecimal code. And what we can do is we can use that if we ever need to grab these again or change anything. I can just hit Control V and paint that right in there, and that's going to change the color of our wood immediately. So what we can do now is, this is one of the ways that I like to do. I'll actually probably just delete that test little layer after we probably won't need that again, but if we do, we can easily make one. And I'm going to make an effects layer. So let's make a new effects layer, and I'm going to do an adjust colors. And this is one of my favorite ways to make shadows inside of the game. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop down my brightness here. And we're going to do it not quite this far. Let's do something like 42. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a mask. And what this means is that we can draw out where we want that to kind of happen. And so I'm going to just draw out a rectangle here and one here. And I'm not going to worry too much about this stuff because what we're actually going to do is we're going to blur this out. And I'm actually going to decrease the amount of red that's there and the amount of green that's there and make this a little bit more blue. So let's bring this down to like, yeah, 44 is probably good. And then I can do some down here, and we can kind of just, and what I'm doing now is I'm holding down Alt to kind of do some of these in here, and I'm going to increase this. That's a little bit too dark of a shadow for me. So let's increase this to like 45, and now that's pretty good. And depending on how we want this to interact, right, I'm going to put all of these steps in shadow as well, and we can kind of draw this out, and we can blur this out a little bit more. So it's a little bit more of a classic kind of interaction here. And I'm going to do some here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same kind of thing in here. I'm just going to draw out a little bit of these shadows like this. And again, we don't have to be very exact. And I might use a couple of these effects layers to kind of to build out this stuff. And we're going to do it from here as well. So maybe a little bit like this. So we want some of these like subtle kind of shadows, and we want to also have a little bit, and you can see that that already adds a whole new dimension to this this element up here. And we can do some on this, a little bit down here on this edge. And we're going to have some more precise shadows as well. And these are just these kind of more subtle, like larger kind of involvements here. So now whatever we do on these shelves, right, we can come down, we can go to our books down here. We go back into our painting layer, make sure we have our stamp selected. Let me just grab this and I can drag and drop that in here. And I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. And now I can kind of start to paint these right on top. And I might want to come in here and change some of these colors a little. And I'm going to add these around, and that's one of the reasons why I left these down here, so I can just quickly kind of reference them. But we can also just type in book, and we can get to these pretty quickly as well. We have a whole bunch of different ones that we can kind of choose from here. And we can grab some of these shorter elements And some of these, and we can do some underneath as well. We can create another painting layer. Or we might even want to do it on the debris level, right? So we could go into this particular one if we don't want to. We can delete that level, that layer. And then we can grab some of these. Grab it. And just have them poking out a little bit like this. And you can see how much variety this is already kind of creates for us, right? Like, very cool. And we should also, you know what we should do? We should do like some, well, we will. We should do like a desk for like the librarian and whatnot as well. Awesome. Now what we let's do another effects layer. And this time we're gonna do let's see, we'll do I think what we'll do is a water one. Water or ocean. We'll kind of go back and forth and see. You can see what this does is causes all kinds of undulation and ripples and whatnot. But we're going to take the droplet right out. So it's just going to create this kind of undulating kind of effect here. This is what we're going to use on our lava. And again, we're going to create a mask, and then we're going to start to reveal the areas that we want. So I'm just going to pull out a rectangle, a square there, and we'll do this. And then I'll do this. And we don't have to be exact because we're going to blur out those edges a bit. And then we can use all of the different parameters to kind of interact with the system. See? Now that's undulating a little bit too much, right? And we might want to slow it down a little and slow down our intensity. So you just get this rather subtle kind of movement. So if we zoom in here, you can kind of see that this just it's like these moving elements. Um, and now we're going to add in a couple of other stuff as well. So we can, what is one of the great things, now that we have this mask here, if we want to, we can actually duplicate this layer and change what it is, but it will maintain the mask. So once you've kind of built out the mask as far as like where you want it to be and whatnot, if we wanted to add in another element, I could just duplicate this. And then instead of that, we could have it to be ocean, for example. And then what we can do is change some of these parameters, but you can see that it's using the same mask as the one before. So let's drop our distortion back here a little bit. And you can see that this is going to create some really cool kind of interactions here. And I'm just going to bring this in a little for the edges. Yeah, and that's going to be like our heat ripple effect. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drop that in underneath my water because this is also um, additive depending on the stacking order. So a higher up one will affect lower ones. And now we have this really cool kind of movement and animation to our areas over here, as you can see here. And now let's create one more effects layer, and that's going to probably finish it up for this kind of stuff that's out here. And then we'll start to add in all of the cool stuff that we can kind of do around it to really bring it to the forefront here. So one more, and we're going to do this one as clouds, I think. Yeah, we're going to make this kind of be like smoke coming off of all of the different elements here. And we can do the same thing. We can create these like trails of smoke and whatnot as it steam or whatever it might be that rises off of these elements. But we want to make sure it doesn't really affect our building up here. Maybe it's up too high and whatnot. So we're going to, again, we're going to add a mask. And we'll add in all of this area down through here to our mask. We might even want it to be creeping up on our steps here a little bit. And again, we can blur out those edges so you can see we get this really cool kind of effect here. Now let's slow this down a bit. So I'm going to do it to be like 55 so we have this like slow moving rolling amount off there. And I think we'll drop down our shadow. I don't want it to be, well, we could do it a little bit in there. But I think that I kind of want it to be more on the light side. But I'm going to just drop down the opacity of it a little bit. Maybe we wanted to go a little bit faster than that, huh? Maybe like 60. Yeah, something like this. Maybe we'll do like 65. Yeah, something like that. So now we have all of these cool little elements that are interacting with our map system. And everything is starting to look pretty good here. We got all of this, these like lava elements, and we got this little river over here. So now we can start to add in all of the little details that we want. We have all of the functionality of our system. We have everything that we really kind of want to interact with here. We might add in something else later. What's this layer? This is why you need to name things. I'm not sure if I did that on accident or what. But maybe we'll use it here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here, and we'll just call this library. And I'm going to put this down right, we want to do it right above our columns. And we can grab all of this stuff, and we can drop it right inside of there. I'm going to leave the incline on the outside. But now, if I were to come in here and click on my library, you can see it's all one unit. I can kind of interact with this as if it's one piece. So if I wanted to move this around or do something, I could. We have our incline. This is more ground elements, right? So this is our lava edges. This is our lava fill-in bits, and also some of the, you can see I just dropped it in there. This is all of our other ground kind of elements, right? So I think I'll drop this right in here as well. So now we've cleaned this up pretty well. Everything's in its place. We have our ground, we have our incline, and our library. And this is all great too, because if I hide this, for example, I could fill this in and whatnot, but I could hide this and reveal things as we go if I so planned it that way, right? By using it in that particular element. All of these become their individual kind of aspects. All right, so what kind of other elements do you think that we should add in here? I'm going to actually, before we go too much further, I'm actually going to create a shadow layer here for my painting area. And I'm actually going to grab this, and I'm going to do a little bit of refined kind of shadow stuff in here. I'm going to bring it to black, and then I'm just going to bring up the blue a little bit. And let's drop down that opacity. And I'm going to shrink it down here a little bit. I'm just going to do some a little bit of shadow in through these areas here, just to add in a little bit of extra control and elements here. And now I'm going to change the shape of this a bit. I'm going to make it a little oblong, something like this. And I'm just going to do this on these things here. Make that a little bit larger for these. And then I'm just going to kind of come along here. To give it a little bit of extra oomph. And I don't want to go too crazy, but I do want to allow that kind of extra depth that I can kind of get by doing this. And I might even do a little bit along this edge here. And you can see if we turn this off, you can see that adds quite a lot to that. I'm going to make it round again, and I'm going to do a little bit out here. And then I'm going to make it quite large. And I'm going to drop down my opacity a little bit more. I'm going to do a little bit extra coming out like this. And that's going to give it a little bit more height to it. And then I'm going to do a couple of random ones out here. Now this could be changes in elevation or whatever on the outside here. Now we can go back into our Abyssal map pack here and go into our decorations, and we have all kinds of cool decorations in here that we can kind of use. Oh yeah, yep, all the books are like mystery novels with the last pages missing. I like that. It's the best. All right, so we can grab some of these other elements. We have some like bone piles and whatnot that we can start to decorate around with. So we can go back down into our ground area here. If we want to make it to seem a little bit more hellish, and I'm going to drop down the opacity on these quite a lot to make them very subtle. Maybe not quite that much. Let's increase that a little bit here. So you can see if you zoom in here, you have all of these piles of the dead out and around. We might even want to do some like this here and there. And we have some dead trees that we could kind of place around and individual skeletons and whatnot as well. And on the incline level here, what I'm actually going to do, I think I'll actually place a couple of these out here as well. We'll do some that are kind of like sticking out over these lava areas. Maybe what we'll do is we'll do a couple of these and we'll put like some fire on them and whatnot where they're catching on fire from the we'll do one on this side, a larger one. And I'll grab a couple of these like fire elements. And again, I'll drop down the opacity quite a lot because we'll build this up a little. what I'm doing is just making it incrementally uh, more opaque. Mm. Oh, you know what we should do is now add in all of our lighting so that this stuff can really kind of come to the forefront. And we might even want to grab some of these, like these rock formations that we have here. And we could do some of this stuff out in the lava and make little areas that you could travel out to as well, if you so wished. I think we'll do one more effects layer too. I think we'll do time of day. Gonna bring out some of that stuff. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Oh, thanks, Steve. No problem at all. I'm actually going to be calling it quits here in a few moments. So, do you guys have any other questions, or is there anything else that I can kind of explain to you? Well, let's do lighting real quick before I'll call it quits here in about 10 minutes. So let's add in our lighting system here. And we'll do some, rather than global illumination, I think what we'll do is we'll just do it all with these actual point lights. And what I'm going to do is, I'll show you here. I'm actually going to change the fall off here so it's a little bit smoother of a transition. And let's make this quite large. So I'm going to make this to be like 15, and we'll make this like 10. I'm going to do a couple of these to make this have this ominous kind of feeling out here. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to duplicate that. So we're going to do like 10 and 15. And I'm going to make this 100 and make this 50. And then I'm just going to kind of place a couple of these around. And you can see we get these cool like shadow elements and whatnot that really makes it feel like that um, this world isn't exactly. And then we can do one. Let's do one on the inside here as well. And it actually kind of creates almost like a vignette for the surrounding area, right? So you can see that that just adds like a whole nother dimension of ambience to our, especially with those moving clouds and the lava. It makes it feel very ominous with all of the blackness around. All right, so we have a question. Can you create an image that has effects that always automatically run in FGU? No. not to my knowledge. I believe that I mean, you can use the effects on any image, and I've actually done this a lot in the past of like dressing up handouts and whatnot with effect layers and doing things with lighting and all kinds. Um, but there isn't like you can't create like an automated function that applies a whole bunch of different effects to it immediately. Yeah, so there we go. We have our cool map that we created. It didn't take us very long at all. Um, and now you have a place for your players to visit for 10 minutes and not pay any attention to it. Oh, thanks, Mr. Ty. Oh, yeah, you bet. Yeah, we actually, I think that there might be, I wonder if I have any handouts that we did recently. Mm, yeah, you bet. I'm not exactly sure about that. So the question is, do you have an approximate number of LOS points on a map before it's too taxing for the system? Obviously, that's going to be dependent on the system, um, but I that would be a question for Carl. Um, so I'm not exactly sure. I've never run into an issue myself, even with some pretty large, complex maps, but I'm sure that there is a particular limit where it eventually will bog down. Oh, awesome! I'm that's a great compliment, Mr. Tai. I appreciate that. All right, so we're just getting back into the swing of things. So I'm just going to do a shorter stream today. I should be back this next week in full swing. So if you guys want, we can actually do a couple of handouts, and I can show you some ways that you can kind of spruce them up. You can do all kinds of really cool stuff with them. And I always try to come up with new and inventive ways to use the system. So if you guys ever have any suggestions or if you run into a problem, please let me know. I'm more than happy to do whatever I can to help you guys figure stuff out. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, yeah, right. You can totally do that. Add smoke effects to it, all kinds of stuff. Great, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. And as I said, this next week we'll be back for a full. I usually try to run until around 6 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll just go do about halfway today. And I start at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So hopefully I'll see you guys here next week. And as always, have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you guys all again soon.